Sarah woke up each morning before sunrise, her alarm buzzing softly so as not to wake her two young children sleeping in the next room. She worked tirelessly, juggling shifts as a waitress during the day and cleaning offices at night, all to make ends meet. Despite her relentless efforts, there was never quite enough. Rent, utilities, school supplies, and groceries stretched her thin, leaving little room for anything else. Her youngest child, Emily, often asked why they couldn't buy treats like other kids did at school. "We're saving our pennies for important things," Sarah would explain gently, masking her frustration with a smile. But deep down, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Grocery shopping was always a challenge. Standing in aisles filled with colorful boxes and fresh produce, Sarah carefully calculated prices in her head, choosing only the most essential items. Even then, she worried about whether she'd have enough to cover the total at checkout. On this particular afternoon, Sarah pushed her cart toward the register, mentally reviewing her list one last time. Bread, milk, eggs, pasta, basic necessities that still felt like luxuries. As she approached the cashier, she hoped against hope that her calculations were correct. Little did she know, this trip to the store would change everything. Not just for her but also for the kind stranger behind the counter. The line moved slowly as Sarah waited her turn, clutching her reusable shopping bag tightly. Her stomach churned with anxiety. She knew the total might be too high, but there was no turning back now. When it was finally her turn, she unloaded her items onto the conveyor belt, avoiding eye contact with the cashier, a young man named James who always greeted customers warmly. "Hi there," James said cheerfully, scanning the first item. His smile faltered slightly when he noticed how few things were in her cart. Just enough to get by, nothing extra. Still, he kept his tone light and friendly. "How's your day going?" Sarah forced a polite nod. "It's all right, thanks." As the scanner beeped through each item, Sarah watched the numbers on the screen climb higher than expected. Panic bubbled inside her. She had miscalculated again. When James announced the total, her heart sank. It was $15 over what she could afford. I'm sorry," she stammered, her cheeks burning with shame. "Can I put some of these back?" Without waiting for permission, she began hastily grabbing items from the already bagged groceries. First the bread, then the fruit, and finally the cereal her kids loved so much. Tears welled up in her eyes as she muttered apologies under her breath. James paused, watching silently as Sarah struggled. He saw the exhaustion etched into her face, the kind that came from sleepless nights and endless worry. Something stirred within him. This wasn't just another customer. This was someone fighting battles no one else could see. "Ma'am," James interrupted gently, placing a hand on hers to stop her frantic movements. "Please don't take anything out." Confused, Sarah looked up at him. "But I can't." "It's okay," James assured her, pulling out his wallet discreetly. He quickly swiped his card to cover the remaining balance. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed a loaf of bread and a box of granola bars from a nearby shelf, adding them to her bag. "You didn't have to do that," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. James smiled softly. "Yes, I did. Everyone deserves a little help sometimes." Her gratitude overwhelmed her. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt seen, not as a burden or a failure, but as a human being worthy of compassion. What neither of them realized was that this moment would set off a chain reaction neither of them could have predicted. That night, as Sarah tucked her children into bed, she replayed the day's events in her mind. The cashier's kindness lingered like a warm glow, chasing away some of the shadows that had weighed her down for so long. For the first time in months, she didn't feel entirely alone. Someone out there cared. Someone who didn't even know her but still chose to help. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that while she couldn't repay James directly, she could pay his kindness forward. Inspired by his selflessness, she decided to start a small food pantry in her neighborhood, a place where struggling families could access groceries without judgment or shame. She began by reaching out to friends and neighbors, sharing her vision and asking for donations. At first, people were hesitant. They weren't sure how much impact such an effort could have. But Sarah's determination was contagious. Slowly, others joined in, donating canned goods, fresh produce, and even cash to support the cause. Within weeks, Sarah transformed her garage into a makeshift pantry. Every Saturday morning, families lined up outside her home, not just to collect food but also to share stories, laughter, and tears. Word spread quickly through the community, drawing more volunteers and donors than Sarah ever imagined possible. For many recipients, the pantry became more than just a source of sustenance. It was a lifeline during their darkest days. One mother tearfully hugged Sarah after picking up supplies, saying, "You're helping me keep my kids fed when I thought all hope was lost." Another man, unemployed and living out of his car, thanked her for restoring his faith in humanity. As the pantry grew, so did Sarah's confidence. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance, but as someone capable of making a difference. Her own struggles gave her insight into the needs of others, allowing her to connect deeply with those she served. But what surprised Sarah most was how much joy she found in giving back. Each smile, each word of gratitude reminded her why she started this journey: to honor the stranger at the checkout counter whose act of kindness had reignited her spirit. Still, Sarah couldn't shake the desire to thank James personally. She often wondered about him, picturing his kind face and imagining the kind of life he led. Little did she know, fate had plans to bring them together again, and when it did, neither of their lives would ever be the same. Weeks had passed since that fateful day at the grocery store, but Sarah hadn't forgotten James. She often thought about him, wondering how she could ever express her gratitude. Finally, one Saturday afternoon, after stocking up on supplies for the pantry, she decided to visit the store again, not to shop, but to find him. When she walked in, her heart raced as she scanned the registers. To her relief, James was there, ringing up a customer with the same warm smile she remembered. After finishing with the shopper, he looked up and saw Sarah standing nearby, holding a small bouquet of flowers she'd picked from her garden. "Hi," Sarah said softly, approaching the counter. "Do you remember me?" James squinted for a moment, then recognition lit up his face. "Of course. How are you doing?" I'm good," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I came here to say thank you for what you did that day. It meant more to me than I can put into words." James waved off her thanks modestly. "It wasn't a big deal, just something anyone would have done." "No," Sarah insisted firmly. "It was a big deal to me and my kids. You gave us hope when we needed it most." She handed him the flowers, which he accepted with a surprised chuckle. "These are beautiful, but really you didn't have to go through all this trouble. There's more," Sarah added, pulling out a folded flyer from her pocket. "Because of your kindness, I started a food pantry in my neighborhood. It's helping so many families who are struggling like I was. And honestly, none of it would have happened without you." James unfolded the flyer, reading it carefully. The words painted a picture of community support and resilience, qualities he admired deeply. "Wow," he murmured. "This is incredible. I had no idea." "You inspired me," Sarah said simply. "And because of that, I want to give back to you somehow. Let me know if there's anything I can do to return the favor." At first, James shrugged it off, insisting he didn't need anything. But Sarah wasn't about to let him brush her off that easily. Over the next few minutes, they talked openly about their lives, their struggles, hopes, and dreams. James shared how working at the store sometimes felt monotonous, but moments like hers reminded him why he kept showing up every day. As they spoke, Sarah realized James had connections worth leveraging. Among her growing network of supporters were influential community leaders, a local business owner, a nonprofit director, and even a city council member, all eager to help people making a difference. Before leaving, Sarah promised to introduce James to these individuals. "They should meet someone like you," she said earnestly. "Someone who cares enough to change lives, even when nobody's watching." Though James humbly dismissed the idea, deep down he couldn't help but feel curious and hopeful about what might come next. A few days later, Sarah kept her promise. She invited James to a community meeting where local leaders gathered to discuss initiatives aimed at addressing poverty and hunger in the area. Nervous but intrigued, James agreed to attend, not because he expected anything in return, but because he wanted to support Sarah's efforts. At the meeting, Sarah introduced James to the group, recounting his act of kindness and its ripple effects. "This is the man who inspired me to start the food pantry," she announced proudly. "His compassion reminded me that even small gestures can spark big changes." The room erupted in applause, leaving James red-faced but deeply touched. One by one, the leaders approached him, eager to learn more about his perspective and experiences. They were impressed not only by his humility but also by his natural ability to connect with people, a skill they recognized as invaluable for leadership roles. One leader, a nonprofit director named Maria, offered James an opportunity he hadn't anticipated. "We're looking for someone to manage our new initiative focused on hunger relief," she explained. "Someone empathetic, hardworking, and committed to making a difference. Would you consider applying?" James hesitated. Managing a program sounded daunting, especially since he'd never held such a position before. But Sarah encouraged him, reminding him of the impact he'd already made. "You've got this," she said confidently. "And besides, I'll be here to help however I can." With her support, James decided to take the leap. Over the next few months, he transitioned from working at the grocery store to leading the nonprofit's hunger relief efforts. The role allowed him to expand his reach far beyond what he'd imagined, organizing food drives, securing funding, and partnering with businesses to provide resources for struggling families. Through it all, James remained grounded, always crediting Sarah and others like her for inspiring him. He often visited the food pantry she ran, volunteering his time and sharing updates about the nonprofit's progress. Together, they became pillars of hope in the community, proving that collaboration could amplify kindness exponentially. But the transformation wasn't just external, it was personal too. For years, James had doubted his potential, feeling stuck in a dead-end job. Now, he realized he had the power to create meaningful change, not just for others but also for himself. His confidence grew along with his sense of purpose. As months turned into years, James looked back on that day at the checkout counter with awe. What had seemed like a simple act of generosity had set off a chain reaction that transformed lives, including his own. Years passed, and the bond between Sarah and James grew stronger as they continued to uplift their community. The food pantry Sarah started had expanded into a full-fledged resource center, offering not only groceries but also job training, childcare assistance, and mental health support. Families who once stood in line for food now volunteered alongside her, eager to give back. James, meanwhile, thrived in his role at the nonprofit. Under his leadership, the organization launched innovative programs that addressed root causes of poverty, such as affordable housing initiatives and educational scholarships. His work earned recognition beyond the local community. He was invited to speak at conferences, share his story in interviews, and even advise policymakers on strategies to combat hunger nationwide. Despite their growing influence, neither Sarah nor James lost sight of what mattered most: compassion. They reminded themselves and everyone around them that no act of kindness was too small. Whether it was handing out meals, mentoring a struggling parent, or simply listening to someone's story, every effort contributed to a brighter future. One evening, as they sat together reflecting on how far they'd come, Sarah turned to James with a smile. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if you hadn't helped me that day?" James chuckled softly. "All the time. But honestly, I don't think I did anything special. I just followed my gut." "That's exactly why it was special," Sarah replied. "You saw someone in need and acted without hesitation. That's rare these days, and it made all the difference." Her words stayed with James long after their conversation ended. He realized that true change didn't come from grand gestures or elaborate plans. It came from ordinary people choosing to care. And while he and Sarah may have sparked a movement, its power lay in the collective efforts of countless individuals inspired to join in. As the years went by, their legacy lived on, not just through the programs they built but through the lives they touched. Parents told their children stories of the cashier who paid for groceries and the single mother who turned gratitude into action. Teachers used their example to teach students about empathy and resilience. Even strangers passing through town heard whispers of their impact, carrying the message home to inspire others. In the end, Sarah and James proved that kindness wasn't just an act. It was a way of life. By giving selflessly, they created a ripple effect that reached farther than either of them could have dreamed. And so, surrounded by gratitude and purpose, they looked forward to each new day, ready to continue spreading hope, one kind gesture at a time. The story of James and Sarah is a powerful reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can create waves of change far beyond what we imagine. Paying for groceries might have seemed like a simple gesture to James, but it transformed lives, including his own, in ways no one could have predicted. Their journey shows us that compassion isn't just about grand gestures. It's about taking action in everyday moments, no matter how big or small. Think about your own life. How many times have you hesitated to help someone because you weren't sure if it would make a difference? Or maybe you doubted whether your actions would be appreciated. James faced those same doubts, yet he chose to act anyway, and look where it led him. Success found him not because he chased it, but because he stayed true to his values and trusted that kindness would find its way back. Now it's your turn. Imagine the impact you could have if you embraced the same mindset. What if today, you decided to perform one selfless act? Something as simple as holding the door for a stranger, offering words of encouragement to a coworker, or lending a hand to someone in need. You never know who might be watching, who might be inspired, or whose life you could change without realizing it. Kindness doesn't require money, resources, or special skills. It simply requires intention and a willingness to see beyond yourself. Maybe it's volunteering at a local shelter, mentoring someone struggling to find their footing, or organizing a community cleanup. These acts may feel small to you, but they can mean the world to someone else. Let's take inspiration from James and Sarah's example and build a culture of giving back. Whether it's within your family, workplace, or neighborhood, every effort counts. Together, we can create communities rooted in empathy and support, places where everyone feels valued and cared for. And don't underestimate the power of sharing your story. When James' act of kindness was recognized, it inspired others to follow suit. By sharing your experiences of helping others, or being helped, you can motivate those around you to do the same. Talk about it, write about it, or post about it online. Your story could spark a movement bigger than you ever imagined. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Look for opportunities to spread kindness wherever you go. Smile at someone having a tough day. Offer assistance to a neighbor carrying heavy bags. Donate items you no longer use to someone who needs them more. Each action adds up, creating a wave of positivity that touches lives far beyond your immediate circle. Remember, kindness isn't just something you give. It's something you receive too. When we lift others up, we also lift ourselves. Studies show that performing acts of kindness boosts happiness, reduces stress, and strengthens relationships. In helping others, we heal ourselves. But here's the thing, we can't do this alone. If you've been inspired by James and Sarah's story and want to be part of a growing movement of kindness, we need your help. Subscribe now to stay updated on more heartwarming stories, practical tips for making a difference, and opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals who believe in the power of compassion. By subscribing, you'll join a community dedicated to spreading kindness. One story, one act, and one person at a time. Together, we can amplify these messages and inspire even more people to take action. What will your act of kindness be today? Will you ease someone's burden, metaphorically speaking? Will you offer time, energy, or resources to brighten another person's path? Whatever it is, know that it matters. Every single act contributes to a better, kinder world. We'd love to hear from you. Share your stories of kindness in the comments below, or tell us how someone else's generosity has impacted your life. Let's celebrate these moments together and inspire each other to keep going. Because when we come together through acts of compassion, there's nothing we can't achieve. The world needs more people like James and Sarah, people like you. So let's get started. One act of kindness at a time, we can change the world. Ready to make a difference? Subscribe now to stay connected and be part of this journey toward a kinder, brighter future.